Welcome back to Division I Rejects. I'm your host, Kobe Manzo. Good to be back in the studio today. Finally, as I fix my microphone here, finally getting everything back and sorted after a long weekend on the road, a long but very worth it weekend. If you have not, obviously, I'm going to start by plugging it. The D1R game day experience that came into UW lacrosse this weekend was an absolute blast. Myself, Jimmy, and Cade really had a great time out there. The game turned out to be fantastic. I think a lot of people had North Central picked to run away with that one. That was very much the Eagles' game there. Quite for a bit, they made it very competitive. Kudos to both teams, and obviously North Central will be moving on. But if you have not checked out that game day experience, be sure to check that out under the live section of our YouTube channel. It was a ton of fun. But we're back on schedule in the studio. Got a lot of great stuff for you tonight. Episode 143. Jhalen Spicer from Harding will be joining me here shortly. We have not had any of the players, coaches, or any other staff from Harding on the show as of yet, so excited to talk to him. They obviously, with the statement win on the year over Grand Valley State, they've had a lot of those this year. They're moving on to the semifinals. They'll play Lenoir, Rhyne, so we'll chat all about that here shortly, but if you want to fast forward to that conversation, if you're new to the show, use the timestamps, the video chapters in the YouTube description. They'll also be available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening or watching. They'll be available down there. So jump around to whatever part of the episode you want to get to first. Otherwise, we've got the Final Four preview for D2, D3, NAIA. Jimmy Martin, Matt Schwarzler join me later on. Quarterfinal recaps from obviously the Elite 8 round that happened this last weekend. Didn't get to post a ton of content because we were so busy down at lacrosse, but did a lot of previewing those matchups. And we'll see if we can do something else live this Saturday, although we will probably not be on location. We're in Michigan. The D3 games are in Iowa and Virginia, and the D2 games are in Colorado and Arkansas. So, gas money. It ain't cheap. I don't think we're going to be on location, but we'll see if we can do a little pregame show live on Saturday. I think it'd be a lot of fun where you guys can interact with us. Otherwise, the D2 Lineman of the Year was announced today, the Upshaw Award winner. We'll talk about that and a team that is still competing Division II-wise. The tackle on that team claims the award. We've got a Division II head coach making the jump to D1 from Pittsburgh State. Stick around to listen about that. And then some bowl games from Division II. Division II, the playoffs were not the only games played this weekend. We had 3 bowl games that I will mention briefly and talk about. But before we get into any of that stuff, make sure you are subscribed on YouTube. Follow us on the socials. Got a ton of great content coming out over the course of these next couple weeks as we get closer and closer to a national championship and get into some off-season content. But thank you very much for tuning in. I'm very excited about this episode. We'll get into that guest conversation with Jhalen. Joining the show tonight, part of the dominant rushing attack from Searcy, Arkansas. This man's averaging 8 yards a carry on the year. Made some big contributions Saturday. Big win over the Lakers. Jhalen, what's up, man? Got to get you on here.
What's going on, Kobe, man? I appreciate y'all for having me.
Absolutely, dude. How about a freaking dogfight? And I think a lot of people were expecting it. It's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to watch you two play, and the way that finished, it lived up to every expectation I had, and a lot of people had watching that game. I'm sure that's what it felt like playing in it too, man. Just slugfest.
Yeah, man. They brought down a crazy defense, but we got a crazy defense too, and I think the nation saw that throughout the game. But man, it was just an honor to be a part of a game like that. Those are things that you remember for the rest of your life. So I'll never forget that day. For sure.
Yeah, dude, I bet. And you guys didn't waste any time either, especially defensively. I know offensively, things probably didn't start out the way you wanted, but they certainly finished the way that you like. Defensively, though, those guys were getting after the quarterback early and often, and it felt like not a lot of teams have given Grand Valley those kind of problems. They got a lot of guys that come back, especially on the left side of that offensive line with a bunch of different postseason accolades and things. Throw that out the window because Bison were coming on that front D line, dude. Talk about their performance, especially early. It felt like that set the tone for you guys.
Man, while they balled out of their mind, I can't say that I'm surprised.
Hell yeah.
That's what they've done all year. And just throughout the game on the sideline, offense getting 3 and out, we're punting the ball a lot. Those guys never flinched on defense. They just, hey, we gonna hold them out of the end zone. Y'all just, when y'all get it figured out, we got y'all. And that's kind of been the way we've been all season, and it's why we've been winning the way we have. So yeah, those guys really had our backs on Saturday.
And you couldn't have had a more different game than last week, too. Talking about the way that it finished, and it felt like last week against one of the, if not the best offense in the country, and you guys almost play into that, and it becomes a bit of a shootout near the end, and both the offenses having just career days. And now you come into this one, and you feature 2 of the best defenses in the country. And I think that's just Super Region 3 in a nutshell, huh?
Yeah, man. We call it the gauntlet.
Hell yeah.
You know, usually the team that makes it out of Super Region 3 ends up winning it all, and it's not easy. It's not easy for sure. But like you said last week, you know, the offense had to get it rolling when the defense needed us, and that's what our team is. You know, it's never nobody's ever pointing fingers when they come off on the sideline, and nobody's ever yelling at each other. Come on, what are y'all doing? It's hey, we got your back. Whenever y'all get it figured out, we got y'all. Don't even worry about it. And
Oh yeah, that's
it's a
important.
great team to be a part of.
That's super important. I think a lot of people look at your offense and don't really see it anywhere else, or at least not in a lot of places, and they start to think a lot of crazy things. But from you, as a person who is a big part of that offense, what is it like to be a puzzle piece that kind of is just one of the major factors that makes that offense run, and what does that enable you to do being a part of an offense like that?
Just the biggest thing about this offense is just how selfless it requires you to be. Um, you know, it really takes all 11 guys doing their job every single play in order for it to work. And just being a part of it's fun. It's a lot of fun. It may not look fun to the average football fan to watch. You know, every play looks the same, but every detail is so intricate, and you know, it's just being a part of it is crazy. And you know, there are some games when you know the slot back, which is the position I play, slot back has a big game. They're allowing us to pitch the ball on the edge, and there are some games where you kind of got to nut up and you know buckle that chin strap up and block to get that fullback going or the quarterback run game going.
Oh yeah.
So it's just we take a lot of pride in being able to do all those things, especially at the slot position where you gotta be dynamic with the ball in your hands and you got to be able to get up under some guys' chins and block. So yeah, I love it. I love
There
it.
are definitely some people who enjoy watching that shit, myself being one of them. I'd do anything to get in there and take some dives, damn it, right up the middle, dude. Because, I mean, you live and die on it. Like, you get that going, everything else opens up for you guys. I've played against it. It's a bitch to play against defensively. Because if you can't stop the dive in the middle, you're done. Because then, I wanted to talk too about on the surface, it might seem like rinse and repeat every single play, but I'm sure you can attest to there's a lot of creativity that actually under the surface that goes into this kind of offense that has to be exciting for you guys because it feels like at any moment you maybe lull the defense to sleep with the same old, same old, same old, and you put a wrinkle in here or there, and you guys are able to bust off some big plays.
Oh yeah. Our offensive coordinator Kenny Wheaton, he's a mastermind. Just the way he schemes the different defenses up. And another thing that I really love about this offense is it really doesn't matter what the defense comes out in. You
Okay.
know, our practice week looks the same pretty much every week. We practice what we do. We refine the things that we are good at, and we kind of just go out and wait and see. And we pride ourselves on being able to adjust on the fly. And like you said, man, getting that dive going, that's the bread and butter right there. And then
Oh yeah.
once that gets going, it's watch out. You got to pick your poison after that.
I'll tell you what, bro. There's nothing. Well, there's probably some things. There are not many things more demoralizing in football than when you know a team's going to run right up the middle between the box and like they're guaranteed 4 yards. Like there are just some days
Yeah.
where that happens, and as a defense, you just scratch your head and you're like, how the hell do we continue to let this happen? But that's because you guys have probably run thousands and thousands of dives and counters and pitches and options, and that's just so ingrained. But with that being said, obviously most of the focus, it's a great answer from you, great coach answer. The focus is on us, right, and what we do, and that's absolutely the right way to look at it. With that being said, going into that game Saturday, was there anything about that GVSU defense that maybe you didn't see on tape or you were surprised by?
I'm not even gonna lie and say that they were better than I thought, which is crazy coming from the
Okay.
number 2 team in the nation.
Yeah.
But those guys played hard, man. You know, their front kind of they got after us a little bit, especially in the first half. Their DBs, their safeties especially, they were some of the best tackling secondary I've ever played in my life. They weren't missing many tackles.
Mm.
Um, and so it was just kind of understanding the fact that if we wanted to make plays, we were going to have to make plays, even if they weren't completely wide open all the time. But like in that last drive, it was just kind of our whole line. And credit to those guys, man. Those guys don't get nearly enough credit that they deserve. But those guys started getting pushed up the middle. We got the B back going, and then yeah, it was just
We
one
roll.
you can feel it on the
Yeah.
field. Once we start rolling, man, it just feels like nobody can stop us.
Very momentum based offense for sure. And that's not usually the way it goes. Like you expect maybe going into the fourth quarter like that, you don't usually all of a sudden just start to get pushed. Like that's not usually how it turns out. That's a testament to your O line. And I think that's huge because when you talk about Grand Valley and that defense, I think their defensive line has some great depth. Not in,
Yeah,
their starters absolutely they have some great talent across those front four or whatever they have in the down the line of scrimmage. But they've got some great depth. They got some guys that are key contributors that come in. So when you have an offensive line that is all of a sudden playing their best in the fourth quarter, that's ridiculous. And you guys proved me wrong. I took GV on our game pick Saturday, so shout out to you guys for proving me wrong. It was an absolutely awesome game, but man, like the energy, I wanted to touch on that too. Fourth quarter, and maybe you guys just haven't gotten much going on the ground, and all of a sudden you start piecing one play after another. I believe it was 15 plays on that final drive.
yeah,
How that
yeah,
had to feel like you guys just finally started to click, and then it just becomes automatic at some point.
yeah. I mean, we got back to feeling like us.
Hell yeah.
We went in the locker room at half, and a couple guys said it like, "Man, that did not feel like us," especially how dominant we've been the entire season. But the thing about this team, the thing about this offense is that we never give in. There was never a point where I saw anybody starting to doubt
That's
that
big.
we were going to win that game. It was just a matter of when we got going, and yeah, man, it's just this team, man. We're tough as nails, and you let us hang around long enough. Not that we like being behind, but you
Yep.
let us hang around, man. Watch out.
Bunch of football guys over there in Arkansas. And yeah,
Yes,
it's,
sir.
the term comeback is a weird one because you're down six. That ain't a comeback. You're in the game, and now you go down and score once, and you're on top of it. You come out on top of it. That's huge. But taking a step back, you're a Texas guy. What brought you up to Arkansas from like the Dallas area?
Yes, sir. I went to Dallas Jesuit High School. It's
Okay,
a smaller private school, but we play a 6A ball down there.
gotcha.
So, playing with the big boys.
Big time.
But the thing that brought me to Harding was I just came on my recruiting visit, and it just felt like home. Like, aside from the football aspect of it, the selling point of Harding football is brotherhood. And, a lot of programs claim to have that, but I feel like here it's genuine. It's genuine. Guys truly love and care for each other, and I think that shows in the way that we play. We're not doing it for ourselves. I'm not the biggest guy in the world, so when I'm going in there block a linebacker, he's 240, he's outweighing me by 60 pounds. I'm not doing that for me. I'm doing that for the 10 guys on the field with me, and everybody has that mindset. I think it's just powerful when you do that. And then another thing about it, honor God is what we break it out on almost every single day. And that was another big selling point for me, just the motivation behind the things that we do. It's not for our own personal glory, but instead to glorify God. And after the game, we prayed to gave all the glory to God because at the end of the day, it wasn't about us. The things that we do are all for the glory of God. So
Powerful stuff, dude. You got a couple fans up here in this house, I know for sure, between myself and a couple of my roommates that have, because I always got the games, whatever games I can get on, and they, by proxy, end up watching a lot of you guys. But talk about that brotherhood, because I'm someone who, coming into this year, if someone had told me about Harding, I'd be like, yeah, I knew that you D2 football squad. Obviously, I knew you guys are a decent football team coming out of that conference, have had a really good couple runs these last couple years. But it feels like on the national stage, this is what happens when you make it to the semifinals. A lot more
yeah.
people know about this brotherhood now, man. What's different about this year's group than maybe the last couple years where, like I've said, you've had some really great runs, but now all the pieces starting to really come together.
Coach Simmons, he said it a lot a couple of past days. On the teams in the past, we've had guys, a couple guys here and there that show up in big games. Every team is gonna have them. You have two or three, but this team, man, it seems like everybody's due to show up when we're playing the best.
Yep.
And I feel like that's been the biggest difference. And then it's just the trajectory that the program's on. Like last year, we went 9-2, and I feel like in a lot of other programs that'll be celebrated, but 9-2,
Absolutely.
that was our motivation the whole summer. Like we never want to go 9-2 again. 11-0 is always the goal. And when you set a standard that high, it's kind of it's hard to let that drop. And when the standard's that high, you expect nothing less but complete domination.
Mm. Yeah. 9-2, by the way. Didn't you miss the playoffs at 9-2 as well?
We did. Yeah, we
Dang.
did. That hurt.
So, yeah. So
That
there
hurt for
definitely
sure.
is some warranted frustration and hunger, and you could definitely, coming from someone who, see the logo on my chest, we didn't win a
Yeah.
game this year. So there's certainly two sides of it, but when you miss the playoffs and have a season like that, then there's certainly some warranted things going into the offseason that you really do have that hunger and those chips start to stack up. But talking about this week, another home game for you guys. I've never been to Arkansas in my life, but damn it, the place looked like it gets jumping on Saturday afternoons. Talk about that environment and what you're expecting from this really talented Lenoir Rhyne squad on Saturday.
Man, just the way the environment has grown since I've been here. I got here in 2020. My first season was 2021. And, we had fans come out to the games, but it's nothing compared to what it is now.
That's great, man.
We got a new field, kind of stadium renovations, and just the support we've gotten from not only the school, but the greater community has been crazy, man. We're just so blessed to have so many people that like what we're doing here and make the people that are coming from all over the place, old Bisons coming from Tampa, from across the country to come see us play. And that's just a blessing and a testament to the things that we're doing here. But yeah, Lenoir Rhyne, again, they're a talented team. This is a Final Four, so everybody's good.
Hell yeah, you said it.
We're not but the formula stays the same. We're gonna focus on us and the things that we do and continue to get better. I know offense, we got a chip on our shoulder. While Grand Valley had a great defense, we didn't feel like that we went out there and handled business. We feel like we got something to prove, and we feel like we owe our defense one. So we're definitely going into this game with a chip on our shoulder. We're looking to dominate, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I know the defense is going to handle what they do. But yeah, definitely offense. We got something to prove this week.
Big time. How big's Harding as a school?
Not too big. I'm not quite sure how many students we have, but yeah, it's not a big school. It's a private school.
Yeah.
So that'll kind of tell you it's
kind of feels like every single one of them, whatever the undergraduate enrollment they're in that stadium Saturday, and then you talk about some of the alums. So that's pretty sweet stuff, too. But I'm excited to continue to follow you guys. Obviously, it's going to be a great one this Saturday, and then 1 week at a time. But you're that close, and I know you guys probably do a great job of shutting out all the noise and just keeping it a nice, close, knit group over there, brother. But I appreciate you coming on here. I think I told you I'd keep it relatively quick, so that's all I got for you. We'll definitely be tuning in Saturday, my man.
I appreciate you, man.
Absolutely. All right, Jhalen, have a good night, man.
All right, you too, man.
See ya. I appreciate Jhalen coming on. We're going to switch over and talk about one of the other teams still competing for a national championship, that being Colorado School of Mines. But not talking about Matoka today. Not talking about Max McLeod, Noah Roper, any of those offensive skill players. Instead, we're going to be talking about Levi Johnson, the right tackle who just won the Upshaw Award for Division II Lineman of the Year, the first winner in program history for Colorado School of Mines. That's big time for them. Obviously, that offensive line has done a great job for them this season. They've got the #1 scoring offense in the country, and some stats on Levi here and a little bit about him if you're not familiar, which, unless you are a just great enthusiast of offensive line play at the D2 level, I'll give you a little bit about him and some of the cliff notes. He's the right tackle over there. He started 37 consecutive games for the Ore Diggers, which is a very impressive stat. They've obviously won 3 consecutive Super Region 4 titles. They went to the national final in 22, and as far as he is concerned, he was a D2 CCA First Team All Super Region 4 and First Team All RMAC, so conference selection, as well as a D2Football.com preseason Elite 100 honoree. Then you talk about the unit up front, that front 5 for Mines. They've had the #1 scoring offense in the country, over 50 points per game, along with a #2 total offense, #6 passing offense, #12 rushing offense. All these just crazy stats. They're undefeated right now, going into a semifinal game where they are heavily favored over there in Golden, Colorado. And expecting another finals appearance from Colorado Mines. We'll see if they can finish it off. But obviously, they do still have Kutztown on the clock, and Kutztown has surprised a lot of people this year. But the Gene Upshaw Award, for those of you who are not familiar, and I was kind of one of those people until probably last year, goes to it can be either offensive or defensive, but the best lineman in Division II football. And the reason I say last year, because Caleb Murphy and the season that he had last year out of Ferris State, where he broke the all-time NCAA sack record, he went on to win that award and actually came second place for the Harlan Hill Award. But if you're looking back at the records here, I mentioned that Levi is the first player, for Colorado Mines to win the award. the last 3 players to win the award have all played for Ferris State University, which is insane. So that makes Levi Johnson the first player to win the award that was not a Ferris State Bulldog since 2018. That's ridiculous. Caleb Murphy, Dylan Pasquale, and Austin Edwards, all Ferris State alum, go back to 2019. And there's definitely some other schools that have been represented on here quite a few times. GVSU is one of them. Slippery Rock has a couple different selections on there. CSU Pueblo. But really a fun award, a really sweet award. And I think it's something that we need more of this. We need more of this. Maybe we need, what we need is a D1 Rejects sponsored award. I don't know what the hell our award would entail or who the nominees would be or what the criteria would be, but that'd be pretty sweet if we did a couple awards. So as I think about that live, I don't really know. I don't know what we would do, but I think it'd be fun to have an award like that. But shout out to Levi. I wanted to bring that up and kind of lead the show off with it because I thought it was a really cool award. And while we are talking about mines, we will talk about the quarterback and this insane picture of Matoka here. Somehow this was not ruled a touchdown, but this is ridiculous. As the tweet says, who else would you rather follow into battle? I love that. I freaking love that. He does this, what you call it, a helicopter or almost a front flip into the end zone. And you can see one of the Central Washington defenders got his hand right on the face mask there. And I don't believe that specific play was ruled a touchdown, but I do believe they ended up scoring on that drive. And if I look here, the quote, I can't access the quotes, can I? But Art from Sports, I think, quote tweeted it, and it was pretty funny. I liked that a lot. And then one of the other quotes that I did see, and I thought I would share this with you guys as well, if I have it. What? I do not, but it was from one of his teammates, and I'm blanking on his name. Sorry, pal, but it was a hell of a tweet. He said, "I'd follow John into hell with a squirt gun." I fucking love that. I think that's great, man. So shout out to those guys. Huge win over Central Washington. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. Elsewhere on the Division II scene, we have a coach moving up to the Division I FCS level, and not as an assistant, not as some type of coordinator. He's going to be the head coach. That's Brian Wright. He's hired as the 31st coach in program history over at Northern Arizona. This was the official announcement from NAU Athletics I would say it's Monday, so this was just yesterday. There is a peek right here at Brian Wright, the new head coach over there at NAU, and I was going to pull up the Twitter version of that, but either way, a big-time move for Brian Wright. He'd only been with Pittsburgh State for a few seasons. Obviously, they have experienced a lot of success with this man at the helm. Oh, that's why it opened up, because it's an article. But big-time move for him, and very excited to see what that entails for him and that team moving forward. I will give you a couple more, at least, facts about this one, but it was announced on December 3rd. So yes, yesterday, Sunday, this was announced. And according to their athletic director, he says that he was a targeted candidate who quickly became our top choice as NAU's football coach. His track record of success as both a head coach and offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach is impressive, and we're eager for his experience to translate into success at NAU. So pretty basic kind of introductory piece there, but he's been at Pitt State since 2019, so not a crazy long stint there with the Gorillas, but in his time there, they have been dominant. The last 2 years, 23-3 between 2023 and 2022. Obviously, back-to-back MIAA champions and then playoff runs, both ending pretty deep into the playoffs for him over there. So I think there's definitely going to be a lot more football played at Pittsburgh State, but kudos to Brian Wright and his family. That's going to be a fun move for them to go over there and probably a pretty good bump to the wallet as well. Now, as it concerns the now current head coach of Pittsburgh State, kudos to them because they did not stick around and wait to make this decision. And you will see here as I get it pulled up, this face coming in to lead Pittsburgh State from the future is a familiar one to the Gorillas squad over there. So let's take a watch of what they had posted out.
Where this program is and where you guys have got us to, that we need to continue that momentum. We don't even need to take one day off. There's not going to be a search. There's not going to be any downtime. We're ready to roll. So let me formally introduce the 16th head coach of Gorilla football to you guys. It may be a name you recognize, Coach Tom Anthony.
Let's go, baby!
Tom Anthony, the now head football coach for Pittsburgh State Gorillas. And what's really interesting about this, Tom was going through and reading some of the cliff notes, because I am not familiar with much of the history as far as their coaching staff is concerned, but he was the former associate head coach for the program, but he actually left this last year to pursue a job in a private sector outside of football. So he's not on the staff this last year. He left after the previous season. So a year away from football, obviously he's itching to get back, and they seem to think that this is the perfect fit for them to come back. A lot of the guys in this roster and this team are very familiar with him. I would be curious to hear some of their thoughts on kind of the dynamic of a coach leaving the staff for a year and now coming back in a more prominent position than he had before. Seems interesting to me, to say in the slightest. But, I mean, talk about a guy that's obviously very familiar with the program, with their culture and those kind of things. And if you are in a position where you're Pittsburgh State and your team is one of the top 5 teams in the country, one of the top, at least top 10 teams in the country right now, when you talk about performance on the field, you can't afford to have this long out process and potentially take a step back when it comes to losing student athletes or other pieces of your staff to the portal and other jobs across the country. So they get this done very quickly. I think the timing is very important here. And you have a guy who knows the culture here. He knows the student athletes. He knows the staff. He knows the system. It seems like very much so this will just be Pittsburgh State picking up right where they left off. And I think the Division II scene is better when Pittsburgh State is a damn good football team. So I, for one, am very excited about that. He had joined the staff initially in December 2019 as defensive coordinator and then was elevated to that role of associate head coach prior to the 2022 season. So, defensive-minded coach for the Gorillas. But we can touch quickly on some bowl games before we get into the quarterfinal kind of recaps. Ashland, McKendree, and the America's Crossroads Bowl. That's the GMAC and GLVC kind of partnership over there. Ashland takes the win 23-20, and this felt like a really evenly matched game, a lot more scoring in the first half. McKendree went into half up 20-14, and then Ashland 9-0'd them in the fourth quarter. So that was, I think, a pretty big-time win for an Eagles team that has struggled at times this year. With that being said, through the air, I think both teams really struggled in this one. You look for McKendree, Caleb Fisher had 99 yards, 1 touchdown to an interception, and then Trevor Basinski, I hope I'm saying that one correctly, for Ashland, 283 yards. He had 3 touchdowns, but also 2 interceptions, takeaways through the air. That's always going to hurt, and it's going to keep a game a little bit more low scoring, I guess, which is what we could expect absolutely from this one. Ethan Young, with probably one of the plays of the game, took one of them for 97 yards in the interception. He had 2 picks on the day for McKendree. That was pretty big time right there. And then Tia EJ, so he had the one for Ashland, it looks like. But big win for Ashland. They end up closing out the season. What's their record here? 9-3, which is actually really impressive. And I think, and I've kind of said it too, it's not the year we were expecting Ashland to have. They open up 1-4. Which is kind of ridiculous. When you look at their schedule, you know, at IUP versus Ferris State, and then Tiffin, who ended up being the 1 seed in Super Region number 1. I certainly don't think Ashland underperformed. I think it's just a tough draw. They played a lot of really good football this year. So shout out to them. Otherwise, you get the Southern Arkansas versus Missouri Western and the Farmers Bank and Trust Live United Bowl. That is a mouthful, but that is ridiculous. The Griffins falling in this one. Southern Arkansas picks up the win 43-27 in what was an overall pretty dominant kind of game here, especially in the second half. Outscored them 28-14 in the second half. And that's a team out of the GAC that really had a solid year because that's a team that is in the top 3, at least top 4 teams. Talk about Ouachita, Harding, Henderson State. Those are kind of the squads they were competing with this year. They did pick up some quality wins this year, one of them being over Henderson State, over teams like Southern Nazarene, Oklahoma Baptist, like those kind of squads. But unfortunately, they were one of the squads that were the first one out of the playoffs. I think this was... I thought it was going to even be a little bit more competitive just because of the year that Missouri Western had, but I think that just shows that this Southern Arkansas team really came to play. So shout out to them. And then finally, another GAC team, Southern Nazarene versus Emporia State. That one, man, Braden Gleason is a very good football player. 55-24, the Hornets take this one, and Gleason finishes 35 for 48, 405, and 6 tuds. No turnovers for him. That's incredible. He also had 18 yards on the ground with another touchdown. So he accounted for 7 touchdowns offensively in this one. And that is absurd. So wanted to touch on those. That was the Funtown RV Heritage Bowl. I love that. But Before we get into everything else, let's go talk about some of these quarterfinal matchups. Had some really great games, and I think a big piece, too, is now going into the semifinal round, we're going to have instant replay available. I know the Harding GV game, I've heard a lot of complaints about some pivotal points in the game where people thought one call should have gone one way or the other. I haven't seen a whole lot of them. I don't really have an opinion on it, but I know instant replay does get introduced in the semifinal round of the playoffs, so that's going to be big this week. But we can talk first about Kutztown at Slippery Rock. We talked a lot about this on Saturday for our game day show, and I think the biggest thing that we had mentioned was like, yeah, it's obviously really difficult to beat a team twice. Kutztown did that. They did it in a pretty solid fashion as well, and I talked about it a lot on the show. Like, you have a dominant run game and you have a really stingy defense. That's what travels in these kind of situations. Kutztown certainly showed that, and we'll take a look at kind of just some of these clips from the game itself. It wasn't really the Kutztown offense getting a ton going. I don't think that was really the secret for them, but what they did is they were very efficient. Slippery Rock outgained them by almost 300 yards on the day, and when you look at some of these clips, Kutztown defense obviously stepping up, but I'm sure we'll see the interception here soon. The pick six was probably one of the biggest plays of the day. It came a little bit later, but yeah, when you look at this game, like I said, Kutztown was a lot more efficient, and the Slippery Rock, the Rock, I always blank. I think they have like a lion mascot, but it's the Rock. They couldn't get it done in the red zone, and they had a lot of turnovers when it came here. That's one right there, and this is the play that I'm talking about. Imagine that. You go all the way down the field, you drive, and then it's picked off, taken the other way, all the way down the field. That's a 14-point swing. Slippery Rock could have gone in to score right there, even things up, but now Kutztown's ahead by 14 points at this moment in the game on the road to a Kutztown team that knows they probably should have been hosting this round anyways. Man, things were definitely going the way of the Golden Bears. They finished 28-16 at the Rock. They led it going into halftime 21-14, and then had a nice fourth quarter and finished off Slippery Rock. And I've been very high on the Slippery Rock team all year long, especially when you talk about Braden Long under center. He was 33 for 43, 322 yards, but he did not have a passing touchdown. Only that interception that we saw there in the clip. So really just another solid win from Kutztown. That was Antoine Lloyd with it says 100-yard interception return. It was over 100 yards. It's probably 102, 103-yard. Pick six for him. That had to be the play of the game. Offensively for Kutztown, there wasn't a whole lot going on. Darryl Davis McNeil was actually, his impact was definitely minimized. He finished 35 yards, which is really uncharacteristic for him. But Judd Novak had a great day under center. 2 touchdowns, 11 for 16, super efficient through the air, but more importantly, he took care of the ball. No giveaways through the air for the Golden Bears, and now they get the chance to travel to Golden, Colorado to play Mines. It's a buzzsaw, man, but we saw Central Washington hang with them for a half, and especially when you talk about this Kutztown defense, anything can happen. Anything's on the table. Would not be the first time that Kutztown has been counted out by, I think, a lot of people on the national stage. So look for that to be pretty exciting one. Another thing they did very well in this contest is limit the impact of Kyle Sheets, another guy we've talked a lot about. He finishes with 3 catches for 28 yards, and this is a guy that's one of the best receivers in Division II football. When you can limit him to have that kind of day, and then you limit their ground game as well. He didn't have a rusher really over 60 yards, so Kutztown did a great job of limiting the individual performances, which on an offense like Slippery Rock, where across the board, anyone can kind of have that breakout game, that is very impressive. So that's kind of the cliff notes on that one. Like I said, it's going to be exciting going into Colorado Mines. We can move over and talk about that one right now. And for this one, Mines versus Central Washington, halftime, things were tied up at 14. I remember seeing the tweet, and I'm like, holy shit. Like, this Washington team's really they're going to hang around there, stick around in there to do it. Unfortunately for Washington, Central Washington, that defense for Mines stepped up. They did not score in the second half. John Matoka does eventually wake up, and even on a quote-unquote off day for Matoka, because he was not just killing it through the air, 16 for 25, 225 yards. He did not have a passing touchdown, did have an interception, which was huge, but he was getting it done on the ground, I think, a lot more. He ends up with 83 yards on the ground. Noah Roper had a great day for them, especially when it comes to the red zone. He's a pretty powerful back, and he's done a lot of great things. Landon Walker, the third piece of that rushing attack for them. And again, I think if for me, it's kind of encouraging if you're a Mines fan to see a game like this, because I think they won in a little bit of an unconventional way than what we're used to. This wasn't an absolute shootout or a boat race of an offensive game for Colorado Mines, but they found a way to win. And like I've talked about a lot before, I think this team has grown a lot from now to a year ago to today to now. I think there's been a lot of growth from the squad, and I think that really shows they can win the game in a lot of different ways. That front seven for them that I've talked about ad nauseum, they shut down the rushing attack from Central Washington. Their leading rusher on the day was the quarterback. He had 12 yards rushing. That's big time. Big time plays from Colorado. They will host another game. They'll have Kutztown coming into town, but probably the game that I'm most excited to talk about here, Harding hosting Grand Valley in what was, just an absolute slugfest. I think it lived up to all the expectations from myself and others. This game was absurd, and I think the final score reflects that. 7-6. Harding takes this one. We can take a look at some of the plays here. And oh my gosh. So Peterson was in to start the game. Harding wasted no time defensively. You see the sack there. Grand Valley's offense has been struggling the last couple of weeks. Harding certainly taking advantage of that. Another time, getting back, putting pressure on the quarterback. Peterson would leave the game with an arm injury, and now you're going to see Avery Moore under center. They like to run him between the tackles. Not today. The Bison, that front five, front six, however many they were bringing, they were getting pressured. They were doing it very often. You're going to see it again here. The strip on the backside. He picks it back up, recovers, but man, Harding was just nonstop. Now, Grand Valley had an early touchdown. This play was the difference maker. A punt on 4th and 12. Oh my gosh, it's a fake, the end around. Great play by number 7. Using the sideline, gets the tackle. That felt like a very pivotal point for this Grand Valley team that was, running out a little bit of steam. This is the third quarter. It's only 6-0. Now, Harding drives all the way down the field at a 9-minute drive. They close it off here with a little bit of the brotherly shove, if you will, and then the extra point to put them ahead. And that's all they wrote. 3 minutes and 50 seconds left, and Grand Valley would attempt to go back down and score. There's Avery Moore doing his best. He gets tripped up in the backfield for a major loss. Thole, the third-string quarterback, would come into the game, but he actually looked like he threw it away. We don't have the actual clip here. He looked like he threw it away almost on 4th down and 2, and it was a very head-scratching ending over there in Searcy, Arkansas. Look at the boys and how pumped up they are. Good for Harding, good for the Bison. Just another quality win for them. You talk about beating probably the best offense in Division II, arguably in Central Missouri, and then you go and beat one of the best defenses in Division II in Grand Valley State. Their resume is absolutely flawless. This Harding Bison team has been fun to watch. I got to tune in to the end of that game. We were actually driving back from the La Crosse North Central game. I got to tune into the end of this one. This Harding team, man, they are legit. We knew the GVSU defense was going to show up. The defensive line, the linebacker core, the defensive secondary, they have been playing at an incredible clip. We didn't know if the offense was going to finally pick up their game and put some points on the board. A big part of that, too. Kudos to Harding, man. That defense from Harding really, especially in the red zone, they really shored up, bend, don't break. This felt like they were fighting for every single yard. So that's a big-time win for Harding. Looking at some of the stats from this one, and I know we talked earlier with Jhalen about it, but I think, just this Harding, that I think the term comeback was thrown around a little bit, and I heard the guys on D2Football.com talk about this in their show. I certainly don't think it was a comeback. They were down by 1 score, but the fact that Harding probably loves that situation where they can go down and score one touchdown and be in a position to win the game is obviously huge. Now, after Peterson went out of the game, the offense through the air for Grand Valley State was just out the window. Avery Moore finishes the 26 yards passing, 3 for 6, and then Alex Thole and Trace Hergert. That would have been the punter, actually, on that little piece. But they only had a couple yards passing as well. And for Harding, not exactly the most crazy offensive performance. That drive they put together late was really the only time they were able to piece together a very long drive against that Grand Valley State defense. But great teams find a way when it matters. Harding did just that. They will host the semifinal matchup against Lenoir Rhyne. Very exciting stuff for Harding. We talk about that Lenoir Rhyne squad a little bit, and I think people were very high on this Blazers squad, myself included. What I also know is that Lenoir Rhyne is a very multi-dimensional offense. You heard me talk about it on Saturday, and that showed up. Not great weather over there in Titletown, Georgia, and Lenoir's defense potentially with the best performance of the year. Also, the rushing attack from the Bears, I think, came up big time in this one. They roll 35-7. Lenoir Rhyne beats the brakes off the Blazers from Valdosta State. And Dwayne McGee, probably the MVP in this one. He finishes, where is it at here? 22 carries, 102 yards, 2 touchdowns. But he had another great performance from Lenoir Rhyne in Turner Knox, 15 carries for 145 and 2 touchdowns. So the ground game for Valdosta State was just all over the place. Like I said, their defense, though, holding Sammy Edwards, who we've seen had video game numbers almost every week, holding him 14 for 35. That's a great number to hold him to. 2 interceptions, takeaways through the air for that Lenoir Rhyne defense. Sean White through the air had a very quiet day. And again, this goes back to the weather. It was super foggy, super rainy. It was just like straight football weather, ground and pound weather. Lenoir Rhyne, very much built for that if they have to be. Valdosta State, maybe not so much. And I think that shows here. I'm sure if they could, they'd probably change the weather of this one. But again, great teams find a way when they have to. The receivers certainly did not have much of a day. But there were a lot of great contributions defensively. Andre Jefferson maybe being one of the most notable ones. 4 tackles for loss, had a big-time sack in this one, and he's a guy that set a couple records as it concerns Lenoir Rhyne here. He's been on a lot of people's radar on the national scene, but not just him. That entire defense from Lenoir Rhyne, I think, stepped up and made a big-time game out of this. They will go to Arkansas to play Harding, and now that becomes a really interesting matchup because you talk about the physicality of Lenoir Rhyne. You know Harding's that physical, so we could have a very similar game to a Grand Valley State Harding where it's a low-scoring ground and pound, or does Lenoir Rhyne try to go back to some more explosive plays down the seam, hopefully with a little better weather here, but as we get closer or farther and farther into the playoffs, we're not going to have much great weather left. So we'll see about those. We're going to try and do some type of show before the games on Saturday where we'll do our game picks and such again, but just a great week of football. There were some fantastic games, and it's only going to get better. We got semifinals and the national championship, and that's it, man. This offseason is going to be something. I've been such in a groove of covering all this stuff. But we can go to the Division III side of things with Jimmy Martin, who will recap all the quarterfinals for us over there. All right, joining us now, Division III. We were at this game. Let's start it off with lacrosse, North Central Gym, and the spread I know was ridiculous. What was it, 20-something?
20, yep. And I hit the against the spread bet. I did have lacrosse plus 20. So
yes, absolutely. And I think, people expected more of a boat race in that one. Did not expect North Central's defense to give up that many points. And, to be honest, we watched it. It could have been worse. Like, especially early on in the game, we'll talk about a lot of it, man. But talk about being there in person to watch that. I mean, that was exciting to actually get there, to be there and experience it.
Yeah, great atmosphere, very warm crowd. Obviously, they're giving us drinks and tacos and all sorts of stuff at game day. So shout out to the lacrosse community for being so welcoming to us in that one. So that was pretty awesome.
Absolutely, dude. It was a blast, and they are a great fan base. Our setup there right in the tailgate was pretty cool. That was definitely a note that I had. Like, whenever we do this in the future, like, put us in the tailgate. Like, that's going to be a blast. We'll definitely have to figure out more of the timing and that kind of thing. But as far as the actual people there, it was fantastic. But talk about the game and what we saw early on. And I know something that we've talked a good bit about is one of those plays near the beginning that was kind of a 14-point swing, if you will, for them, dude. So talk about some of that.
Yeah, so, we kind of talked about during the pregame show that if lacrosse wanted to win this game, they were not going to turn the ball over. And we saw that the biggest play of the game was a lacrosse turnover. I think it was Gabe Lynch ran down to like the inch mark line, and the ball got punched up through the back of the end zone. And the next play, Joe Sacco ran like an 85-yard touchdown. So obviously, being that they turned the ball over, that was the most critical play of the game. I kind of lined up to our hypothesis, if you will, about how lacrosse could win. And, that was it right there. The 14-point swing, they lost by 13. So
yeah, that was huge. Talk about like the energy it felt like after that. Obviously the game wasn't over, but it felt like it, man. It was like it just took the breath, I think, out of just about everyone in that stadium. I had to feel like.
Then, fairly so. I mean, it would take the breath out of any stadium, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'll pull up the clip here so we can watch it. And this is them driving down the field here. And this North Central offense was just dynamic all day. D'Angelo Hardy had one of the best games I've seen in person. You talk about some of the things he was able to do. Yeah.
Yeah, that was our boy Cade. That was his key player, and I think Cade actually had the best pick for the key players in that one. I want to say
I would agree with that. When you have a receiving touchdown, an interception, kick return, and just insane.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this has ever been done before. So a kick return touchdown, an interception, a throwing touchdown, and a receiving touchdown, and 87 receiving yards. So,
the throwing touchdown was absurd, but that man right there, Kaiser Helterbrand, he had himself a day. I know on the drive back, we had talked about, like, there was a very clear cut, like, who the two of the best athletes on the field were in today, and it was number 2 in the maroon, and then D'Angelo Hardy was obviously one of them. A lot of other great players out there, but those two certainly separated themselves for me.
Yeah, and kind of backtracking to that really long Joe Sacco touchdown after that fumble. The most indicative play of the entire game for North Central, like who they are as a program, was Luke Lanin. I know we're gonna reiterate to say his name, Lanin, because we've been saying Lennon before. He flew down to about the opposite 10-yard line to make a touchdown block for Joe Sacco. That was insane. That was crazy. You saw that clip? That was wild.
So I've got the highlights up here, and we're coming down. So Lacrosse driving down the field, 7-7, near the end of the first quarter. Great. Looks like to be a touchdown run here, but the ball is punched out on probably the half-yard line, squirts out of the end zone, ends up being a touchback. So you go, first of all, from touchdown to touchback, which is a drive killer. You can see the boys actually in the back of the end zone there. Now Sacco wrapped up in the backfield, not once but twice, squirms out of it, jets down the sideline, and now here comes Lanin. There he is running down, and to make this block after the Sacco cutback, boom, right there. And wasn't it the best block in the world? No, but the fact that your quarterback is down on the other side of the field, even attempting to do that, I love it. I love it.
Like if you're like a salesman and you're advertising what North Central's program looks like, you're going to show people that clip of the quarterback flying down there to make a block. Like that's dude, a program-defining play right there, and that's kind of what they build their culture off of, just hustling and just no matter what, putting yourself in a position for the guy next to you, So.
Yeah, and I thought maybe after those first couple series that Lacrosse's defense might settle in a little bit, but they certainly did struggle when it came to finishing tackles. Looked like they were going for a lot of turnovers. This pass to a wide open receiver, that one ended up getting called back for a holding penalty, and you can see the frustrations right there. But North Central would go on to
Coach Brett Spencer was not happy about that one. We had a up close and personal interaction with that dispute between him and the referee.
They'd go on to rush that one in, and that offensive line, that unit from North Central has been dominant all year. They were great in this one. I know we talked a lot about it on the pregame show, but seeing it in person, and yeah, they have great size, but it's not anything that's absurd. I don't believe that's the reason. I think they play as a really cohesive unit, and it helps when you have the skill players that they have to complement them.
Oh, for sure. And like you said, like you got to have skill position players to complement the O-line, and also you got to have a good O-line to complement the skill players. So it's just a tandem, if you will.
Yeah, dude, and oh my goodness, that D-Lo hit right there. D'Angelo Hardy, he sunned a couple kids out in that field, dude. There was not a defensive back trying to tackle that man one-on-one. We saw one of those truck sticks right there, and then here's Lanin trying to make a push for the goal line. But, yeah, on the outside, there were not a lot of dudes trying to tackle Hardy.
No.
It was
I can't really blame him, if I'm going to be honest with you. That guy's a beast.
So. Yeah. Now, they will continue to have to go on the road, which is certainly an interesting piece. We continue to follow along with this Cardinal team, and we can talk about that Wartburg game. You, myself, Cade, I think a lot of people who cover this level of football had kind of locked in Whitewater to be the winner of that one, and unfortunately for them, that's just not what Wartburg had planned out. Talk about that one, dude.
No, yeah, especially because we did talk about, the spreads a little bit too. We called this one to be a very close game, and it was as advertised, 31-28. Whitewater had the early lead in this one, 14-3, and Wartburg stormed back, outscoring Whitewater 28-14 after the first quarter.
Unreal.
So Wartburg definitely had their foot on the gas with Niall McLaughlin tossing 300 yards and 3 touchdowns in this one. Did have an interception, but, obviously Wartburg still ended up winning this football game. And it was due to their defense, if I'm going to be honest with you. The offense obviously put up 31, but Wartburg depended on their defense all year. And you hold a Whitewater team to only 28. You can hang your hats.
Whitewater striking first right there on the long touchdown pass. Yep. not something we've seen a lot of. Alec Ogden has been very efficient for them, but he's not one to really fill the stat book. So I think an uncharacteristic way to start the game for Whitewater, but albeit a very great one. Those Wartburg black unis are so slick, by the way. Great pass right there in the middle of the field, and Wartburg's offense, like you talked about. They didn't strike first, but they struck often after that. And credit to their defense as well. I know we talked a lot about the ground and pound offense for Whitewater. I think that night defense in that front seven kind of answered the call there, if you would.
Yeah, certainly. And that's what we expected out of them. We expected Wartburg to, if they're going to make a push to beat Whitewater, is going to be about their defense. And, Wartburg had a pretty good game offensively as well. But, I mean, I would say they won that game because of their defense. Yeah,
absolutely. And, now they get to host North Central. And, that's definitely a trip for them out there in Iowa, I do believe, correct?
Yep. Yes,
so a little bit different. We'll see if North Central can continue to be the road warrior. But there were a lot of explosive plays in this one, and a lot of them came from the team in purple. You see another kind of a long pass right there, and it was just not the Whitewater squad, that, at least offensively, that we're used to seeing. And when they go up here a couple scores, it was when the score first got announced over the PA at the lacrosse game, people were like, oh, shit, you know what I mean? And as the game went on and it kept closer and closer and closer, Whitewater goes for an onside kick attempt right here and get it, already up 14-3, which is a ridiculously gutsy move. It certainly paid off. They get the possession right there, and then couple plays later, that one probably should have been picked off. But again, kudos to Wartburg. There's not a lot of teams that could have been down early like that and bounced back to get a quality win.
Yep, and that's what happens when you're well coached. The coach keeps the guys composed, he keeps them level-headed, and when you go down, that's when it's most important to have a really good head coach, and you saw that on Saturday. So
absolutely. And the finish, 24-21, and this thing kind of coming down seemingly to the last minutes. Whitewater would score one to put them ahead. And then it was on Wartburg to respond. And I think those are kind of the moments that playoff football comes down to. When you get the ball on your own side of the field, you have to drive down, make something happen. So I wanted to kind of show that drive for the Knights and what that entailed here. And it just felt like play after play, they had to make a play. Here's 4th and 4 on the drop back. They convert over the middle and one of the biggest receptions of the day. Nice spin move, and he busts this one for quite a large chunk of yards. It felt like it was all Whitewater, and they had him 4th down, and then, boom, hit this play, and it swings the pendulum to the total other side. And all the momentum right there, they just continued to drive and punch it in. 1:40 left, and you're encroaching on the red zone on your own field. Like, this is exactly what playoff football is about. You see the sideline, the energy, diving for the pylon. And there it is, man. Like, I think he might have been just short there, and they end up punching it in. Yes, here we go, right here. But do you get a chance to look at those black uniforms for the Knights, dude?
Yeah, those are sweet. Those are wicked.
Badass. So, student section, that environment over there, definitely going crazy, and they it's warranted. It certainly is. But I know you want to talk about that Johns Hopkins game a little bit and how Randolph-Macon came in there and really took it to him. It was a very competitive game, but kind of stopped him on the ground.
Yeah, we kind of emphasized before this one that these were the two run-heavy offenses that were going to be playing each other, and it was pretty much that way. Randolph-Macon ran for 255 yards after running for 388 last week, so, that playoff rushing yard total just keeps going up and up for them. Yep. Putting up 39 points on a pretty solid Johns Hopkins defense is a pretty daunting task, and that's exactly what they did. They followed through, put some pretty good numbers up on that scoreboard. And then Johns Hopkins, their identity was also running the football, and they still scored 36 points, but they only ran for 122 yards.
Man.
So definitely when your bread and butter isn't really clicking, you might have a little bit of trouble on offense. And being that they still scored 36, I think if they run for maybe 150 or 200, they win this football game.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And, credit to Johns Hopkins when their ground game wasn't exactly superb early on. You see a quick early 3-0 lead for them here. They went to the air, and they started to get them some things done, which at times has been inconsistent for them this year. So adjusting the game plan, you'll see right here, he drops one in a bucket down here on the right sideline, and there it is, a great grab. And Johns Hopkins was just trying everything, because at this point, on your own field and against a really quality opponent, or excuse me, that's Randolph-Macon, I'm totally backwards, but both these teams trying to adapt and get something out of it because they know the game plan. They've been studying the film all week. They did a great job of that. But how about the ending? I'm not there on the highlights yet, but we can certainly talk about the way this one ended, which was just a great summary of how this game was expected.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. When you have an ending like that, when you're anticipating something to be such a great game and you get that, it's just what everyone wants to see.
The final play with Randolph-Macon on the road, they've got to run their kicking team out onto the field, and I'll bring it forward to that because, I mean, you can certainly check out the other highlights if you would like. But with the fourth quarter winding down, Randolph-Macon, they're tied at 36 apiece. And here we go. 20 seconds left. The ball getting spotted. The clock ticking down. Randolph-Macon no timeouts, so they run the kickoff team on there, the field goal unit. Now we're at 10 seconds. The clock tick, tick, tick. They get the snap off with about 8 to go. It's almost blocked, and it's through the uprights. I mean, barely. Like, barely. If, my depth perception is off, but it almost looked like it wasn't. But it was good. Randolph-Macon with the equivalent of a walk-off. Now, obviously, they've got to still kick it and finish out the game, but I mean, what a ridiculous finish for the Yellow Jackets. We talked a lot about them. And shout out to Frank Rossi as well. I've got a great angle. He was at the game from the In the Huddle podcast. I wanted to pull up his angle of the... Oh, I'll cut the audio on it because they are getting loud over there. But I wanted to show his angle here of the field goal unit getting on the field. And, dude, these are just playoff football. Like, this is the best kind of environment here. On the road, knock this one through. There's a great view of it going through the uprights. And the boys just erupt. So now they get the matchup against Cortland. And I would assume they're probably going to be favorites in that one, being able to finally host.
Yeah, and I don't think Cortland has any problem with being an underdog. They were a little bit of an underdog last week. And you saw on the show that I picked Alma to win by 2 scores. And I was dead wrong. Zach Boyce tossing for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns, and he told me not so fast, similarly to he told me on the show, Kobe. And I had to go with Alma just because they had that huge win last week. But like you said, when you have an emotional win like that, you kind of maybe have some, a drop in maybe some intensity with that next game. I don't know, but
it's tough too because at a point like that, you got to think like. Even though maybe you wouldn't admit it after a game like that where you've accomplished now more than any Alma team in history and you're looking at it and you almost feel like you've reached the summit. And, again, whether I'm sure they were still dialed in, they were ready to play. They came ready to play. They scored over 40 points in that game. It's not like they had a bad game, but it just in the back of their minds, they almost had this feeling of, we've kind of done it. And it's hard to get yourself out of that state and really prepare the same way for another opponent the next week.
Yeah, especially when your defense have been performing so well all year, and you hold the Mountain Union team at 20 points, and you come out and give up 58. It's just like, ugh. Like, you're not going to win a lot of games when you give up that many points. Even if you do score 41, like, that's just still far short of your 58 points you gave up.
Yeah, especially like you said, I didn't even think about it in that context, coming off such a great defensive performance against Mount Union, and then to go on your home field against Cortland and struggle, I think is – albeit like maybe a little bit of an exaggeration, but understatement. But again, their offense did an incredible job as well. And Carter St. John, you did predict would have a great day. We kind of knew that. We've seen him play at a great clip all year. But Zach Boyes and that offense were lights out. And when it came down to the second half, I think that was certainly the decider because you look at the end of the first or the second quarter, and both teams already have 30 points. And what the hell?
Yeah, that was nuts. I was just looking to find the spreads for next week, and they're actually not up quite yet, unfortunately. But if I had to guess, I'll do like a guess the spread right now for these next 2 games. I think North Central is going to be around like minus 16 or 17 against Wartburg, and I think Randolph-Macon's going to be like a 5-point favorite against Cortland.
I don't think that's ridiculous. Yeah. I could.
I'm trying to like match up that spread, like kind of how the lacrosse game was, and then obviously the cross covered that spread pretty easily. So I mean, we probably shave a couple points off that 20 from last week, but I mean, we'll see.
And you're talking about the national semifinals.
Also at home. Yeah.
No, this one in the first half was incredibly back and forth. We're starting to get into some of the bigger plays here, but you go into halftime tied up at 34-34, and that's just insane to me. But Cortland came out firing in the second half. They would go up 2 scores and then kind of just maintain that lead till the end. So I think the biggest stretch of the game was that first maybe 5 minutes coming out of the second half when Cortland was able to get up and get ahead and retain that. And I know a lot of teams talk about the couple minutes going into halftime, the couple minutes coming out of halftime being super big momentum shifters.
Yep.
And, kudos to Cortland. They did a great job of capitalizing on that, and they weren't afraid to take a lot of shots. See boys there complete another pass to the outside. But the finish was not exactly maybe as crazy as the Randolph-Macon game, but there were certainly a boatload of highlights throughout this one.
Yeah, this whole weekend was action-packed. A lot of these games delivered. There's some really fun games. So.
Yeah, I think there were some I'll have to pull it up because I'm blanking on the numbers, but I believe there were some new record holders for Cortland, one of them being boys at quarterback, but there were a couple others that kind of set their mark in this most recent contest. And here we are right here, and I'll have us take a look at these ones, if I can give that a read right there. Wi-Fi, there we go. JJ Lapp, a guy on the outside for them we've talked about a ton. He's had some great performances. 10 catches, 172 yards, and a touchdown. He's now Cortland's career leader with 31 touchdown catches. That's a stat right there. You keep going throughout this list offensively for them. And then you go here, Joe Aidavayo, and he caught 7 passes for 82 yards, 3 tuds. That ties the school single game record for touchdown receptions held by numerous players. So he becomes part of that kind of elite company over there for the Red Dragons. And then you've got out of the backfield, Jaden, he had quite a game, ran the ball 28 times, 193 yards, 2 touchdowns, only the second player in school history with at least 3,000 career rushing yards. Now, Zach, when he came here on the podcast a little bit earlier, or a couple weeks ago, I should say, he talked a lot about this man, what they've been able to do in the backfield and how that makes his job a lot easier to enable him to do things like this, Jimmy. 24 for 33, 400 yards, 5 touchdowns, and no interceptions.
Yeah, man. He's definitely got some thank you letters to write to his offensive lineman, too.
Yes, dude. Or some thank you gifts. Oh, my God.
Maybe them all watches or cars or something.
Yeah, I don't know if he got that kind of NIL, but
yeah.
he established the school's single-season records with 3,392 passing yards and 36 passing touchdowns.
He's having a hell of a year. Hopefully he continues that stretch next week, too.
Yeah, no, I assume this Cortland team is going to continue to light up the scoreboard. I assume so. But I think a little bit of a tougher ask defensively for Randolph-Macon this week, albeit a little bit of a different approach to the offense, man. But it'll be exciting. Like we had talked about before we went on, I think we'll do something, whether it be probably Saturday morning before these games kind of kick off, just do a little live piece, do some game picks, talk about the games. And it might not be a game day piece or on location, but it'll still be a pretty fun thing.
Yeah, man, let's do it. Let's lock it in, baby.
Sweet. Anything else you got for me?
No, I think we covered it all.
I think we did, man. Like I said, I'll reiterate how fun it was there to be at the game. To we always talk about recapping the games, watching highlights, looking at box scores is one thing, man. But when you can have the chance to be there and feel the actual energy in the stadium, lacrosse showed out. That stadium, I don't know why I didn't have crazy high expectations, but whatever I had was kind of blown away. They filled that up and it was pretty loud in there.
I tried telling you, man, Roger Herring Stadium gets pretty crazy.
Yeah, it was pretty badass. They had a nice setup over there. And I thought maybe because I didn't think it was very enclosed, but it kind of was, actually, which definitely helped them out.
Yep.
Sweet.
Yep.
All right, Jim. I appreciate you, dude. We'll get you back on your Saturday for some game picks.
Yes, sir. All right. See you then.
Sweet. See you, buddy. Finally, here to finish things off, NAIA, man. We've got some very interesting matchups to talk about. Before we get to that and the seedings, let's talk about the weekend that was NAIA football. Schwarzler's back. What's up, man?
Not much. I'm just getting back from Vegas. I had kind of a nuts weekend, so I had to do a little bit of catch up on the NAIA slate this weekend. But holy cow, it was another chaotic playoff weekend. Yeah. Some really good football being played. We can kind of kick it off with Northwestern, I think.
Absolutely. And the thing is, the only downside is now all of this gets so overshadowed by the big time playoff picture. I know UW is obviously in the scene. They've got quite the matchup ahead of them, but that does kind of stink. Is this time of year, obviously everything gets overshadowed by the looming CFP.
Absolutely, and I'm a Washington fan, so I'm having the time of my life right now.
Yes.
But there's just a lot of other good football going on around the country. And obviously you guys have touched on it, D2, D3 stuff. It was just kind of another weird, like, what is going on type of weekend. Northwestern, St. Xavier, to kick things off. Not really as weird. Northwestern still is in a weird mode of looking mortal, but ultimately they get it done 34-17. St. Xavier, too, having a really solid defensive performance. Like I said last week, them moving on was kind of a surprise, and I was impressed with how well they battled in there. But ultimately, like, you have a guy like Jalen Grimstead still able on a down day to run for a touchdown and throw for 200 plus yards. And, Connor, what's his name? Connor McQuillan also having a solid day, 99 yards to his name and a touchdown. It's hard to stop, but I will say Northwestern has put some interesting things on film the past couple weeks.
They absolutely have, and it was a very different style of game than the one we just saw a week ago, right, against Dort. And it is very encouraging to see your team be able to win in a multitude of ways, but definitely I think a little bit more of a comfortable win. I think you could probably agree with me here for the Raiders.
Yeah, absolutely. It was always kind of Northwestern's game. They were going back and forth, but once the third quarter started and, you get later in the game, they really pulled it out in the fourth quarter. But also St. Xavier, I think we do need to mention their defense still having 12 tackles for loss, forced fumble, 3 sacks, pass breakup. This St. Xavier team kind of gave Northwestern all that they could handle. And they've been doing it all season defensively. Obviously, the week before we saw it too, them pulling it out. So good season for them. They got a lot of stuff to be excited for in the future. But man, Northwestern finding ways to win, and they're still one of the top teams in the country. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to make it seem like it was a very comfortable win for them either. Tied going into halftime, I do believe. And then it looks like here, the fourth quarter is where they really separated themselves, 14-0 in the fourth, and that's going to help you win football games. But by all means, certainly not a wire-to-wire victory. So didn't want to give that impression, but it did feel like the offense came along and was performing at a pace that we've come to expect with them and wasn't necessarily the fist fight, the literal backstreet alley brawl that we saw last week. We've seen a couple of those these last couple of weeks. They're exciting. I don't know if you saw the Harding GVSU final in D2, 7-6 was quite the game. We've seen a couple of them. They are very entertaining, but this feels like Northwestern's more their brand.
Absolutely. And like you said, it was tight at halftime, but you felt like Northwestern was just about there, just about to pull ahead. So yeah, good showing from them, both teams, honestly, but Northwestern ultimately moves on as the defending national champs.
Huge. How about those boys down in Florida?
Look, man, I was a big Bethel guy. Been saying it past couple weeks. Best team in the analytics, the metrics, but they don't play football on a spreadsheet,
Absolutely not.
We've
heard a lot of that over the last couple of days, man. The games need to mean something.
Kaiser kind of beat the ever-loving snot out of Bethel. Like, it wasn't even remotely close. This ground attack that I've been talking about for Kaiser week in and week out with Mesinger and now Brunette, who's kind of the ace up their sleeve, if you will. He has had like 800 yards rushing this year, but a quarter that's come in the last 2 weeks. And this like thunder and lightning approach here, Brunette's like 6'2", 230. Like, he's just a massive human. And obviously Mesinger's had a really impressive postseason and season in general, just ultimately getting it done for them. And then Wendell Fillard, the guy that I talked about a little bit last year, was pretty excited to see one of their DBs, very athletic guy, had a scoop and score and a punt return touchdown in this game.
You do not see that very often.
You don't see that very often. And this is a guy who came back, very talented. A lot of people in that Kaiser program are talking about Wendell being one of the greats at that program, that new program. It's exciting to see. This Kaiser team's on an absolute tear right now. They're scary.
Yeah, this was much more of a wire-to-wire win. They go up 28-7, you see right here, and they're taking shots down the field. They looks, to me, at least watching just the tape and some of the, I shouldn't even say the tape, just watching the highlights is all I really got to watch here looking at them. But we know there's obviously a big difference. But taking shots, they look very comfortable, and their defense really determined the pace of play a lot, which I think was huge, especially against this kind of offense we've seen explode. One of those takeaways right there coming from the linebacker core. And when you can dictate the pace of play on a team like this, you just start to really roll. They were great in the red zone, and that's something we've seen a lot of teams struggle with, especially the Division II level, is driving down the field and not being able to finish with points. Not a problem that has plagued this Kaiser team at all.
Absolutely. They've been getting it done in all phases of the game and even special teams, like getting points in that phase. Like, huge for them, making big stops. God, this team might look like the best team in the NAIA right now. I'm going to be completely real with you. This team is like scary. Like, we've talked about teams like, oh, they could be scary. They look pretty good. No, this Kaiser team is red hot. I would take them against anybody left right now. They are insane.
I like it. And they got, if I'm not mistaken, a pretty favorable matchup as far as seeding goes, a pretty favorable matchup this coming week, correct?
Correct. They play I forget what number seed, 10 or 11 seeded College of Idaho.
Yes.
At home.
Yeah, and we can talk about them right now because that was probably an upset that we didn't do NAIA game picks on the show on Saturday, mostly because I don't think Jimmy and Cade would have known about most of the teams, if any of them.
That's fair.
And I didn't really want to do them by myself. And admittedly, I've come a long way in the last couple months to at least start to try and watch some of these games, but doing game picks alone wouldn't really do it. But talk about this matchup. Grandview is a team that's been so consistent over the course of this year, and for them to have a blemish and kind of a rough point at this part of the season is tough.
Yeah. And this was a game, like, the score looks close, but College of Idaho had this in hand pretty much the entire time, staying at arm's length away from a Grandview team who's looked unstoppable all season. Their only couple close contests have come in the playoffs, and obviously even then, like, there's some big point margins there for them. But College of Idaho getting it done. It's kind of funny that we talk about Kaiser and College of Idaho playing, because last year Kaiser was in this situation as a 12 seed in the playoff, kind of coming into the semis as the underdog. College of Idaho gets to prove it against last year's underdog in their upcoming playoff game. And Andy Peters, man, 3 touchdowns on the ground, 77 yards rushing, 225 yards to boot, and 100 of those going straight to John Schofield.
Yeah. That is huge. That was something for me, at least, that I had noticed. It's not a passing touchdown for them, which maybe not absurd, but not something that you would expect. And that, to me, the ground game, obviously huge. You mentioned it. And then how about the late pick 6 was 90-something yards. That seemed like, I don't know if it was necessarily the last nail in the coffin, but it was one of those that just certainly took the breath in the air out of the opposing sideline. And Grandview starts out 9-0 in this one. That was the thing, too, that when you get out ahead, multiple scores, and then you kind of, like I just mentioned, you get to dictate the pace of play and maybe take your time a little bit more at the line of scrimmage and just kind of feel more comfortable. They didn't get that for very long. And going into the half up 9-0, you come back out, they score 14 unanswered, and now you're looking on the wrong side of it again. Like, it just flipped, I think, that quickly.
Absolutely. And I guess I did misphrase it a little bit when I said it was arm lengths away for Idaho, but once they started rolling, you could kind of tell. Yes. It was like, okay, this team's storming back, this team. And then obviously in the fourth quarter, you go from 14 points to 17 points the quarter after, and you kind of could just tell that pick 6 obviously playing a huge role in the end of that game, and then a field goal with a few minutes left to seal it. That'll do it, man, for this College of Idaho team that honestly has been turning some heads, and I guess that we all but counted them out, and look at them, Final Four.
It's pretty sweet. Yeah, it's really cool to see. And I know looking at their first round matchup, it was against that Montana Western team, I do believe, correct? And someone that they saw each other in the regular season. So those are always kind of interesting matchup in the playoffs. We've actually seen a really good amount of it. We just saw a Kutztown and Slippery Rock team play in the national quarterfinal. That was a PSAC championship game a few weeks ago. And surprisingly enough, a lot of these second-time matchups we've seen have played out the same way as the first time around. Doesn't usually work that way. Kutztown, Slippery Rock, the Golden Bears take both. Grand Valley State, Ferris State, the Lakers take both. This time around, the Yotes get it done on both occasions. The phrase beating a team twice is difficult might be going out of style.
I think it is, because even at the upper levels of football, like, you see it. Like, look, I'll go on a tiny tangent here. Pac-12, for example, like all the champions that have like played it, the teams again, Washington beats Oregon twice. Utah beats USC twice. Utah beats Oregon twice. Like,
What the
very
hell?
weird trend. I don't know what's happening. It's something with game planning and film. I have no idea, but I feel like across the board at all levels, we're seeing that. And it's, we've seen it even in the NAIA, obviously Northwestern, in a much closer game, albeit, but still taking down Dort.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that might be a dead phrase. Dare I say it? Might be a dead phrase.
We're laying it to rest on this program.
Yeah.
I think like between the three of us on Saturday, we said that quite a few times, and it did not come to fruition once. And I thought that was kind of funny. But a team that got going pretty early is this Georgetown squad who gave Indiana Wesleyan all they could handle in the first half. And kudos to IDub for trying to stage a comeback later. I think it just made the score look a little bit more interesting, but this one felt pretty good for the Tigers.
Absolutely. And getting things, kicked off, you go up 7-0 after a pretty, 10-play, 5-minute drive. Things are looking good. And then boom, pick six right out the gate after that. Definitely got momentum rolling for Georgetown. They're up 14-0 early. Never really let it go. This defense is just horrifying. I talk about it every week. Multiple pick sixes. You're talking across the board, 7 tackles for loss, 6 pass breakups, a forced fumble, and 4 sacks. I mean, holy
How about
cow.
allowing 8 rushing yards? Now, I know the TFLs, the sacks, like those certainly go into that. I don't give a damn.
Still, I mean, you're talking like Indiana Wesleyan's running back, Dedrian Williams, is very solid.
Stud.
12 attempts for 51 yards in total on the day. That is absurd. Absolutely absurd. And this is an Indiana Wesleyan team who's been rolling on offense pretty well. Obviously their defense is staple of that team, but their offense is very good.
Yeah. No, we've seen a lot about him, especially earlier in the season when they were going through conference play. And then you look at the time of possession, which when you are generating turnovers and keeping their offense off the field, how about basically 39 minutes to 21? That is a good recipe for success right there.
Yeah, and Georgetown's offense does good things still, but they're able to play keep away. They're able to chunk you down the field and take time off the clock and do all that boring stuff. But it wins you football games, dude. Can't even hate on it.
No, you let them get to a lead early, then you're in trouble.
Yeah,
very big
absolutely,
trouble.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this Georgetown team, like this defense is crazy, which I'll be excited to see. I guess we can kind of transition that into next week's games.
I'm going to say, is it enough? That's the question.
Is it enough? Because Northwestern has looked mortal for the past couple years. Northwestern is going to take on Georgetown in Orange City, Iowa next week. I don't know about this one. It's hard to pin down because Georgetown, obviously Jalen Gramstead, dual threat quarterback for Northwestern, has been absolutely fantastic this year. Georgetown has faced a lot of these dual threat quarterbacks. Obviously, you look at like Baker and guys like Ulesgaard, who are incredible dual threats, and some of their conference play. You deal with Lindsey Wilson, who usually, in both phases of offense is very good. Bethel, their quarterback is a dual threat guy. They've been able to shut it down. I'm very curious to see with what Northwestern has put on film the past few weeks, them looking mortal. How does that look to Georgetown? Does this defense smell blood in the water? Because I kind of feel like they will. I kind of feel like there's blood in the water, and this defense could get after them. But also, Northwestern is the defending champs for a reason. You can never count these guys out. The fact that they've, been playing decent, I wouldn't say their best football ever by any means. It's still winning these games against top 15 teams. Like, you can't discount that. That's still a very good football team. Yeah,
and if they do end up putting it all together again, it's going to be terrifying. But like you said, even though they are perfect and they're coming off of the undefeated season, or were they undefeated last year as well?
Yes. Off the top of my head, yes.
Hesitantly, yes, so. But either way, like the fact that they have all of these accolades and things in the past, it's like you said, there are chinks in the armor, and they will be able to host. But looking at the matchups here, man, I know there was a kind of a little bit of uproar about these. What were your thoughts on these?
Yeah, I mean, the matchups make sense. It's hard with these athletic departments because obviously money's the
travel,
big
right?
problem.
That's huge.
The travel. You got to go from Caldwell, Idaho, all the way down to West Palm Beach Spring, whatever it's called, down there in Florida. I mean, that's not easy to fund. And honestly, truth be told, I don't know how they're making it work. I don't know if they're flying. I don't know if they're taking like a week road trip.
There's no way. They better get their ass on a plane. That would be absurd.
I would hope not.
I will pitch in. D1 Rejects will pitch in.
We
won't
will,
be much.
It's the thought that counts. Also, real quick, do need to correct myself. Northwestern did lose a game last year, but it was to Morning Sun.
I didn't know either.
Season. Yeah. First game of the season. Okay. Anyways, with Northwestern, obviously being in a central location, they're kind of the one that, like, no matter what, it's really not that bad for them. But obviously, you can't put Northwestern against Kaiser. They look like the two best teams in the playoff right now. Or in Northwestern, obviously the defending champion, they're going to get the default of being one until they lose. But then also, like, College of Idaho's in a situation because geographically, they're West Coast and everything's built the East Coast. It's a hard situation. I mean, we're even seeing it at upper levels with the 14 playoff. Like, Washington's in the very corner of the country. They got to play the, Texas or Alabama or Michigan and all this stuff. It's hard to balance. And especially at the NAIA level, they don't have the luxury of being able to throw money at this problem, or at least not as much as you'd like to make it an easy fix. Like, College of Idaho is going to have to shoulder a lot of costs to go on the road. And then also, it's a playoff game. You got to get up for that game. Everybody's already wound up. Like, you got to factor in all this stressful travel and stuff. I mean, the good thing about this College of Idaho team, though, they faced some adversity in their season. They faced a couple losses during the regular season. And obviously last week against an undefeated Grandview proved that is ultimately what matters. Being able to take that momentum, from the back half of your season, take adversity on the chin and just roll with it and improve. It's exactly what they've done. And I don't think seating wise, there's anything that could really be done to fix this situation. It's just corner and middle. Like, it's so hard. So
yeah, there's already a lack of football as far as the lower levels are concerned out west. It feels like, especially
absolutely,
NAIA is actually better off, I think, than even Division II and Division III out there because of the Frontier and the some other conferences. But what do you think? Do you think we get a rematch here between Red Raiders and Kaiser? What are they? Something Hawks? Seahawks? Is it?
Seahawks, yeah. Kaiser looks like the best team. I said it already. I think Kaiser's, I don't want to say a lock because that's a lofty thing. Just like I just about said the same thing about Grandview last week, like how that turned out for me. But this Kaiser team looks so good. College of Idaho's got to travel. And honestly, Georgetown Northwestern could be, you could flip a coin for that game, I feel like.
Yeah.
But also, like, if Northwestern comes out the gate looking like the Northwestern we know from the rest of the season, I don't know. Georgetown's got to go blow for blow with Jalen Gramstad, and that's absolutely pretty hard to do, and he's clicking.
35-25 was the final last year. Northwestern, they took it over Kaiser, and we'll see. I know that one. They're probably doing a great job of having their eyes just on this game, and if we had one of them on here, they'd probably give me the same answer I always get of a week at a time. But damn it, if they win this one, I think they know who they want in the ship.
Absolutely. And if not, they still get to prove something because they were that short, just a step short last year. So
yes, exactly. So even whatever happens, this is an improvement for them down there in that squad, dude.
Absolutely, it's gonna be another good weekend of NAIA football. What can I say? I say it every week, but it's true.
I love it. We're kind of broken records on here. That's straight. I'm cool with it, man.
It's fine, dude.
That just means we're spoiled.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, we're spoiled, but sweet. That's all I got for you, Matt. I appreciate you, man. Thank you, and have a good work week. How about that?
Yeah, Jesus, no kidding. I'll see you, Kobe.
See you, buddy. Have a good one.
Later.